Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bridge Takeover of Win TV. I'm your host, Claudia Watts, managing editor of The Bridge. And in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, we wanted to highlight some Latinx greatness. And we'll be joined by Walter Alvarado, El Pedro Knight, and Marcus Dowling to talk about cross-cultural event Adobo DMV. We'll also be joined by Chris Clayton of Chris Cardi and also the co-founder of the 8th Street 5K. We'll talk to Joseph Orzal, the co-founder of creative collective Nomu Nomu, and also the creative director for Mochella. And we'll end with a performance by Permanent Psy. So with that, I'm going to bring in Marcus, Walter, and El Pedro.
Hey, what's going on, Claudia?
Hey, Marcus. How are you?
How's it going?
I'm great, thank you.
What's going on, guys?
What's good? What's good?
About
I haven't seen you guys in a minute, like in real time. This is wild.
Yeah, since before the pandemic.
Exactly.
I think it was Flavor of Love the last time the three of us were in the room together.
Yeah, so for people who are tuning in and they have no idea who the three of us are and why we were in the same room, just over 2 years ago, I co-founded a party with Pedro and Walter called Adobo. That celebrates the heritages of Latin American, South American, African diasporic, and Black people throughout the DMV and worldwide. And we've had an amazing run. This year, even in the midst of the pandemic, it's been fantastic. A couple of facts and figures real fast. In the DC metropolitan area, there are citizens who are residents who are immigrants from 15 Central and South American nations, 10 African countries, and most of the Caribbean. And 54% of the area's foreign-born residents hail from Latin America or somewhere on the African continent. So those are numbers that I think speak to why Adobo exists. People often ask me, like, why is there an Afro-Latino party that like does so well and draws so many people? And why does it feel like you guys like came in and walked into a room that was already like established? So I think that's a lot of it right there that people just don't understand. So I wanted to start off with that. And then I wanted to turn first to Pedro and have you explain who you are and explain why for you Adobo was so important.
So yes, my name is Pedro Knight. I am a DJ, event promoter / organizer, activist, multi-hyphenate really. My family is from Nicaragua, but I was born in Maryland, Montgomery County. Shout out to Gaithersburg and Montgomery Village. I would say that there was a lot that went into the creation of Adobo and the sentiment behind wanting to develop a party brand that didn't just service Latinos in the DMV, that serviced people from the Caribbean, people from the West Indies, people from the African diaspora, and right here in the DMV. So I think the main sentiment was frustration at seeing how segregated the different crowds were in DC, where all the Latin parties were in one lane, the Caribbean parties were in their own respective lane, African parties were in their own, and each scene sort of kept to themselves. And in my eyes, everything was very homogenous. And I think we wanted to create something different, something that celebrated all of these cultures under the same roof. Because myself and Walter, growing up in Montgomery Village, one of the most diverse areas of the country, we grew up with the reality of being around people of totally different backgrounds. And we grew up celebrating and enjoying cultural elements from other people's communities, from the Caribbean, from Africa, and whatnot. So I think we wanted to create something that spoke more to our reality and something that really exemplified the diversity that's found here in the DMV area, which is untouchable. You don't find this level of diversity anywhere else in the world. So, we wanted to bring people together. We wanted to celebrate different cultures under the same roof. And I wanted to play different kinds of music. I didn't want to just play Latin music. Right. I thought that would be boring. I wanted to play dancehall. I wanted to play soca. I wanted to play Motown. I wanted to play go-go. So in order to have that, I needed the crowd to back me up with it. And Luckily, we tapped in and The rest, as they say, is history.
Right. So Walter, I'll say this now. I probably haven't said this to you before, but when I talk to people about adobo, I say that you're like the cultural spirit of what adobo is all about.
Yeah.
Like if there was one person I point to and I go, if you want to understand the spirit of what adobo is as a party, as a function, as a unit, talk to Walter. So if you could speak to why that is a thing that I would say and how that is kind of like allowed you to evolve as a person. Because I feel like the person I knew 2 years ago is a very different person than the person I know right now. And a lot of it has to deal with specifically adobo. So
that's growth.
The growth.
As someone who's always took pride in their culture, I think the biggest thing in everyone's culture is the community. And that's honestly what we built is a really big, inclusive community that, has open doors for anybody from any background. And I think that's why we differ from everybody else. People don't get that experience or that feeling of, being at home and being able to celebrate what they're made of, who they really are. And I think that's what we take pride in adobo. And honestly, I'm the guy that greets everybody and I'm the loudest person in the room. So I think people feel safe around me to say that they feel like they're at home.
Cool. So to that point of speaking about feeling like you're at home, we've married people at adobo.
Yes.
For real. Like we actually had a wedding ceremony at Big Chief. Pedro, you're an ordained minister to be able to do these things. So if you could speak to a little bit of like how something like that would occur, like why something like that would occur at adobo specifically, and what do you think allows people to feel comfortable in the party to want to be able to say, get married at the party?
I think, and I'm going to back in on what Walter mentioned about our community. I really think that the main testament to our success has been the growth and the vibrancy of our multicultural, multi-diasporical community. I think that in itself provides a sense of safety in seeing people from different backgrounds, different religions, different social classes and whatnot, all dancing under the same rhythm, the same beat. Just walking in, you'll see, oh, this is different. This is something I've never seen before, but everybody seems comfortable. Everybody's smiling. So let me just join in on that. So I think in regards to the marriage, I think that's really just, it just speaks to how at adobo, we didn't want to impose any rules on ourselves. We didn't want to impose any kind of limitations as to what we could produce. So I'll go into a little story here with the wedding.
Yes.
A friend of mine who I used to work with at Club Glow as a promoter, last year in April, she texted me and she asked me if it would be cool if her friends celebrated their marriage at adobo. And I was like trying to figure out exactly what she had in mind. So I was like, okay, like, do you guys want to have like a reception type of thing here, or like, are y'all actually trying to celebrate the union?
And it turned out.
Yeah, it turned out that the groom was from the same neighborhood as my mother in Nicaragua, in Granada. It's this neighborhood called Palmira. So as soon as I found out that piece of information, I was like, you're getting married at my party. We are making this happen. I'm going to join y'all together. He was on a marriage visa, so there was a time constraint. They had to get married within a certain amount of time. I didn't even know that. Like, yeah, no, it was deep. It was a deep story. Like they met each other. I mean, Marcus, about the political instability and the turmoil that's been going on in Nicaragua. So, they met each other before, everything went under. So I think she was teaching English, and they were like, he was sort of like a community liaison between like her and the school. So they fell in love. Unfortunately, the government started killing its own people in Nicaragua. Things turned really, really bad. And she ended up having to be evacuated to the United States. But unfortunately, she had to leave him behind. So by the grace of God, they were able to get a marriage visa. They brought him over. We did the marriage at adobo, we did the wedding at adobo, and then I did the actual wedding with like their family and friends. I
Yes.
actually DJ'd that a couple months after the fact.
Right. Amazing. So, Walter, I want to ask you a simple question with a broad or small answer, depending on how you want to look at it. What do you essentially think is the most important feature of the Afro-Latino communal union in the DC metropolitan area? Like, what does that mean that there's like these people that come from these spaces that can actually unify and come together? Because in not a lot of places in the country do you find a thing like adobo could actually thrive and exist. But what is it about DC, do you think, in the DC metropolitan area that allows for people from the African diaspora and people from the Latinx diaspora to be able to just like unify so strongly?
The short answer, and straight to the point, is one word, and that word is dancing. As you know me, I'm always dancing on.
Always.
And I think that's the biggest thing. That's just like human nature. It's a way to connect with anybody. You don't have to speak. You just feel it through the music, and it goes hand in hand with dancing and music. And I feel like that's what sets us apart. That's another thing that no one's in our league when it comes to dancing. It's like nonstop. You don't see people standing around at our party. Everybody's enjoying the moment, and it's not even just such like a party, but more of an experience. Something significant always happens for everybody. They'll see somebody they haven't seen in like 12 years at adobo, and then they'll remember that adobo for that moment. And that's what we thrive on, is people sharing that moment with us and us being able to always provide that special occasion for them.
Right. So your thoughts then, Pedro, about taking this thing global because of the pandemic, which I think was like something we always talk about, like to give people like a bit of the secret seasoning of adobo. It's the fact that we're always like a year ahead of ourselves. Like we're talking like, hey, so wouldn't it be fun? Like at the beginning of planning adobo, like wouldn't it be fun if we closed out the year one time with Titsworth and Dave Nada? Wouldn't that be fun? And we thought like maybe one day that could happen, but we're always like a year ahead. So thoughts then about the fact that we were talking about like festivals and bigger parties and taking it to different cities, and then COVID happens and we've like achieved all of that anyway. So your thoughts about that?
I think ultimately, in a sense, we have to be a little thankful for this situation, because ultimately it made the brand stronger. Ultimately, it forced us to strengthen the position that we had, not just, when it comes to race relations or diversity. I think when it comes to fighting on behalf of Black and Brown communities, we had to stand up and really dig our feet in the sand and dig our toes in and hold on to that position, because with everything that's happened, and not just that's happened this year. I know that police brutality and these race relations, it's a huge topic for the year, but the three of us know that these things have been going on in this country for 400 years. And the fact that we're now experiencing a tipping point, it really forced us to defend the community and to do our best to fight on behalf of the people who are being most persecuted in this country. So the fact that we were able to take that in real life, and the fact that we were able to put on a protest with Long Live Go-Go, with Mochella, in the middle of an intersection on Juneteenth, on the middle of an intersection of 14th and U Street, the fact that we were able to make that happen, I think that might be the crowning achievement of Adobo DMV so far, despite all the great things that we've done in the past.
Right.
Just last week we were able to transmit Adobo to on a global scale with Clubhouse Global, with their amazing platform that they've built throughout this quarantine.
Yeah. Talk about that, because just guys in general, just talk about the fact that like adobo happens, and then like a community of DJs and professionals in the area who all fall into this African and Latinx diaspora, just like fall into our laps, and they're all dope. And it's not like I'm saying this because they're like my friends and I would go, and have dinner with them, but they're actually legitimately phenomenal professionals, and they all happen to fall within our umbrella. So it's kind of like watching this thing kind of like exist, then explode, then hit another level. So just talk about that from either of you guys.
I'll take Walter. I'll let Walter take this one.
Yeah, so like Bo and K Meta and Matt OD and everybody. It's crazy, right?
Like I said, I feel like Adobo's been it's been a chain reaction of good, of good luck with everybody. And, it's really opened doors and opened our eyes as well as to the talent that's in the DMV. And not just in the DMV, is just how small this world really is and how through Adobo we can make it even smaller, but for the good of our community and help advance our people. And not only that, showcase our talent, showcase how unique each one of us are. I think that's really special.
Right.
Yeah, and I also believe it's not just about highlighting the talent in this area. It's about highlighting the culture, and I think that's why right now we're making a big push on Twitch to really push this sound to a global audience, because we really believe that this sound, it's special, it's unique, it's something that brings people together, and it's essential to the operation, not just for Adobo, but I believe for the DMV area. And I believe that it's a real good way to bring people together and to get minorities on the same team, because there's a lot more things that we have in common than things that separate us, and we need to celebrate those things that we have in common with each other.
So I have a thing that I posit in conversations I have with other people about what we do at Adobo. Like I always tell you guys, like people will like literally stop me in the middle of like a random conversation about something that has nothing to do with Adobo, and they'll be like, "Hey, so Adobo," and I'm like, "Well, okay, that's nothing to do with anything we're talking about right now, but I'll obviously talk about Adobo." So there's a thought that's going around, and I'll put it into this conversation, that the Afro-Latino diasporic point that Adobo sits at is where the minority population of DC and the DMV is headed in a more significant format. It used to just be Chocolate City, but now it's like Adobo City in some way, which is like, when somebody said that to me, I was like, oh God, what have we done? But I'm down with it. But thoughts about that, like the idea that that's what represents in that space.
I mean, I think that, we do have to be respectful of the history, the racial history of Washington, D.C. We have to keep in mind that D.C. it has the highest rate of gentrification in the entire country. So with us, we had to really be careful to not step on any toes and to make sure that we were doing this thing for the right reason. Not trying to exploit the culture, not trying to, take advantage of certain situations. Just really trying to be a testament to the good parts of our culture, the most vibrant parts of our culture. So I think, in terms of whether it's an Adobo City, whether it's a Chocolate City, we do definitely still want to keep the chocolate in the city, but we do also have to keep in mind that it's bigger than just the Black population, because there's a huge Latin population, there's a huge Middle Eastern population, a huge Asian population, and I think it's about servicing people from those races and those backgrounds who are allies to our causes. And I think, yeah, ultimately, we need to build this multiracial coalition if we want to be empowered, if we want to have some sense of achievement, of progress. I think a multicultural coalition is the way to go. And we're doing that right here in the DMV area through Adobo DMV, through bringing people together through culture, through music, through food. So yes, let's keep the city as chocolate as possible. And let's make it better for the allies. Let's make it better for the people who want to see different people living together in the same city, in the same area.
Right. So final question to you, Walter, because you see this stuff. So after every Adobo, somebody will tell me about something they saw that I did not see, and I could not believe would have ever happened at our party. So Walter, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened at Adobo?
Oh man,
Is this on the record?
Yes, it's absolutely on the record.
I think one of the craziest things that's happened at Adobo was someone who got kicked out and tried to break in 3 different times by changing their outfit. On the back fence at Big Chief and jumped over the fence and tried to come in through the back door. And they try to bribe the bouncers as well. They did not want to miss out on the party.
Damn, I didn't even know about that.
Exactly, right. You never know. It's wild. But yeah, so as far as finding us on social media, it's at Adobo DMV on Instagram, same on Twitter, same on Facebook. The Twitch as well. Real quick plug for the Twitch, Pedro, because you're killing it there.
Yeah, so our Twitch, you can reach us at twitch.tv/AdoboDMV. I'm going to be coming up with a schedule real soon. That's more organized, that's more consistent. Because so far, like I've just been hopping on whenever I feel like it. But yeah, you can tune in and listen to some good music. Walter and I were passing on some ideas on how we can maximize that platform, how we can bring entertainment and a little peace to our community and to our allies through Twitch.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I hope to see you in real time soon at some point because this is crazy. But yeah, I seriously appreciate your time and I appreciate you guys just as brothers and family. So thank you so much.
It's all love. It's all love.
All right, bro.
Take care.
Peace.
Hey, so I'm back. Thank you so much, Marcus. That was a great interview. And he's right. When I was looking for different people for this month's issue, the first person I thought of was Marcus and Adobo. I was like, tell me all about it. So I'm really glad we could have them. Next up, we've got Chris Clayton, owner of Chris Cardi and also co-founder of the H Street 5K. So we're going to bring him on in. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy, but doing good. Happy it's Friday. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that you had time to talk with us today. And so just for you folks at home, the H Street 5K happened this past weekend and we got the shirt, you got the merch. Yes, great. And so it was a run, walk, or bike. And it was pulled together in a very short time frame, almost like a pop-up. And, I think at the heart of it is really this overarching theme of community. And so, Chris, if you could talk a little bit about the Chris Cardi brand and how long you've been a part of the H Street community.
Yeah, so I moved to DC in the summer of 2012. During my childhood, I'd come up here to visit family quite a bit. So when I had the opportunity to move to DC professionally as an adult, I jumped at it. And since 2012, this is the only neighborhood that I lived in. And, it's always felt like home to me. So I've seen the changes from 2012 until now. And, some good, some bad. But I definitely think building that sense of community, building that strength of community and making sure that people feel connected is important.
Definitely. And so how long, well, no, that's not the question I was going to ask you. You all really wanted to focus on voter registration and you also supported a local nonprofit, HIPS DC. And so why was that so important for you to include as a part of the 5K?
So one of the things that we did with our brand when I moved to DC, because it existed prior to living in DC, but when I got here, living in the H Street corridor, one of the things I noticed was that I couldn't find anything with H Street on it. No hats, no T-shirts, no jackets, nothing. And I knew I wasn't the only one that had a sense of pride about the area and where I live. So I started complaining about it. I was like, I'm a designer, I can do it. And we started designing hyper-local merchandise to represent the H Street area and give something for people to wear, not only around the festival, but year round, from hoodies to T-shirts to hats. And as we started to do more and more of the pop-ups, it was like, how can we do things to also benefit those that are underserved in our community? So yes, we're partnering with other creatives. Yes, we're partnering with businesses along the strip. But what about those who have been in the area? What about those who are struggling or facing challenges in our community as gentrification is happening? And we wanted to make sure that we always did something that tied back to not only giving to a local nonprofit or that served that population, but also highlighting it so it's something that gets sustained beyond just that one day of giving back or that one day of service, and letting people know, like, hey, this has been here, this has been around, this is something that you may not know about, but through our platform, we can educate you, get you more information on these organizations and how you can help beyond just today.
Excellent, excellent. And so did you have you all gotten the totals of how much you were able to raise for HIPS DC?
So our original goal was $500. Mm-hmm. And before the day of the 5K, we exceeded that just through partnerships with Dry DC, which is a local garment care business, through partnerships also with Erica Jackson, my company. So we raised $300 immediately. And then as we started to register more and more people through the donations, as people registered for the 5K, whether virtually or locally, that got us over the $500 mark. So before Saturday, we set a new goal of $1,000, and I'm happy to say that we beat that yesterday. Yay! So yes, because I want to present a check of at least $1,000. You know, and again, like I said, it goes beyond just this fundraiser, in this one moment, but to be able to do something like that, that really just shows that not only people here in the community care, but outside and broader DC people care. And then outside of that, the relationships that we all have as transplants and being able to share our story and share our life here in DC resonates with our friends and family beyond the DC boundaries. So excited that we were able to do that. And I can only imagine what we're already looking forward to next year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I do have a question about next year, but I also wanted to stop and talk about the voter registration, because you all were also registering people to vote, and you were also getting people signed up to work the polls. And I know that you all did that contactless, but do you have any like numbers or how many people you were able to get registered or that are going to work the polls? And do you plan to do any other pop-ups around registration before November?
I know the day of the 5K, we registered close, a little bit over a dozen. A fair amount of the people that we have relationships attended the 5K, and a lot of them are already responsible and registered and ready to vote. But like we said, beyond just getting people registered at the 5K, it was giving people the QR code and the additional information to share on their social media, as they may have friends and family that aren't registered, and sharing that importance of, hey, help us deliver this message beyond just today. And also, like you said, one of the things that Erica is a huge champion of is taking the civic duty further, going beyond just voting. How can you get involved in the process? How can you work the polls on election day? And also prior to election day with early voting that's going on, not only here in DC, but early voting that can go on in Maryland as well as Virginia, because we have folks participating, like I said, in the H Street 5K virtually, who were sharing that message as well. And we made sure we provided all the resources that people could point to through the Eventbrite, but also through our blog on chriscarty.com, so people can have a place to go to that's there, and they can get more information, not only on HIPS, but also the voter registration and more information around DC Board of Elections, and encouraging them to find out what's going on in their area if they're outside of DC, and how to participate and how to apply to work the polls. Because one of the things that we talked about, a lot of senior citizens, a lot of people that are in that zone of compromise for COVID, our older community typically works those polls. And then when you look at so and we can't afford to put them in harm's way. But beyond COVID, we just have to be, as a younger generation, more involved in the process early on and understanding what's going on. And then this year, the other challenge is that we're looking at reduced polling stations as well, right? So less people to work the polls, and then less places to vote, which means the lines could potentially be longer.
Longer, absolutely.
You know, so and when you think about that, the voter suppression is already happening, right? Proactively happening. So we have to make sure we're doing more than just voting and creating easier access to voting for underserved communities, as well as getting those that we know of that might not feel that may feel disenfranchised or may be disengaged in the political process. But when you look at, you know, what's going on in Louisville and with Breonna Taylor's case and how there was no justice served there, and you look at how that AG got into place, and then you think about his relationship with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. A lot of people don't know that Daniel Cameron used to work for Mitch McConnell. Now Mitch McConnell wants to push through the next Supreme Court justice before the election. All of this stuff is connected. Absolutely. And you look at the number of judges that that the president has put into place in his 4 years. It's been the most, I think, and I don't know the exact date, but he's appointed the most, I think, since Jimmy Carter, if I'm not mistaken. These are the people who decide when we are in the courts and in front of and in the judicial system, the outcomes. And that is what is at stake here right now. Like it is, and this is why it's so important for us to get registered. This is why it's so important for us to continue to talk about it every day, and why it's also important for us to work the polls and figure out ways that we can get involved. And if it means calling and participating in registrations, whether it's virtually or physically, we have to mobilize and do just as much as we did for a Fun 5K for the election this year, and then the midterms and going forward.
Well, okay. So thank you for saying all of that. You know, I hope that everyone at home really listened to what you said and let it sink in, because that's really, I wanted to give you an opportunity to really express why it was so important for you all to include this aspect in the in the 5K. It's not like an afterthought. It's something that constantly needs to be in the forefront. And like you said, not just for these big election years, but for all of the in-betweens. And so my last question is just that you all talked about, FYI guys, I wrote an article about them. It's in this month of the Bridge. So we had a little pre-convo, and it took you less than 72 hours to pull together this entire event. And you ultimately had over 152 participants, half of which were in person, half of which did the 5K virtually. So what were some of your lessons learned? Like, what are you going to take with you next year, and what do you think you might want to change?
I think so first of all, shout out to Kristen Gnu, who she sent me a text message, honestly, last week, Tuesday, asking what I was doing personally to kind of commemorate 8th Street, and then what my business was doing, because we have a tradition of always doing fun things around 8th Street Festival and finding ways to give back to the community while having fun and highlighting these organizations, like you said. And I didn't even, honestly, I knew in the back of my mind that 8th Street weekend was coming up, but obviously with all the turmoil going on, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. And then when she sent me that text message, I was like, I don't really have much planned to do on Saturday but run. But then I was like, wait, you like running. I know other people that like running. Erica loves running. And then I was like, and me and Erica were already in conversation about figuring out ways to do things around voter registration, and also encouraging people to work the polls. So when I was like, we could all run together. And then through my relationships and Erica's relationships and Kristen's relationships in the neighborhood and in the DC community, we're able to mobilize quickly. I mean, when you think about Makedo and Cool Kids Vinyl, like, they allowed us to set up shop in front of their property. So we had a meeting place for people to gather to meet up safely and get registered. So we could have all the walkers, all the runners, all the cyclists meet up, get them registered in a way. And then one of the other cool things was Dry DC being able to donate gift bags and gift cards so we can do a raffle so we can make it fun. Makedo also chipped in a gift card. So just the quick mobilization through those relationships were awesome. I think one of the things we want to do next year, and hopefully we're not dealing with the challenges of COVID, is make it bigger and better, and highlight minority-owned businesses along the route. I think that would be something really cool.
That would be pretty dope, actually. Yeah, definitely. And we can totally help with some of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to partner with Rebridge to put the word out for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Chris. And I'm looking forward to the 5K next year. And hopefully we'll also get a Street Fest back. But even if we don't, I know that the 5K is here to stay.
Yes, Clark. Thank you so much for telling our story. I think far too often conventional media only shines a light on us when it's a great opportunity for them, and when they can check a box and it's performative. But you have always, this platform has always been consistent of telling the stories that don't always get shared and sharing the stories of people of color. And I really appreciate that. And we all have to make sure we continue to support Rebridge the same way that they're supporting us.
Thank you. I hope you all heard that at home too. Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. And I will see you around, and have a great Friday.
All right, you do the same. Thanks again.
Okay, so next, you guys, I'm going to be joined by Joseph Orzal. He is the co-founder of Nomu Nomu and the creative direction behind Mochella. And we're going to bring him in right now. Joseph. Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Also, are you okay with me calling you Joseph? I feel like maybe you want to be Joe. I don't know.
It's fine. Whatever you want.
Okay. All right. So I spoke to Joseph this month for our Creatives to Watch in the Bridge to kind of talk a little bit about his work as, I guess, would you call yourself the director of Nomu Nomu?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as his work with Nomu Nomu and his work with Mochella. And so I would love it if you just kind of gave the folks at home just kind of a short overview of what Nomu Nomu is and what it does in the community.
Well, initially it started as just a house art gallery that I think it was created in the spirit of like understanding that the formal art world was not sort of interested in the art that a lot of artists were creating and giving representation to artists that were making stuff. So I wanted to create a platform for artists who were kind of on the outs of the art world. So, I mean, I think with that comes a lot of more radical politics. And, you know, sort of an aversion to conforming to what the art world has as standards. And really focusing on like curating shows that have an emphasis on like a more radical and challenging and more experimental shows that are what I'm trying to work towards, are like what an intersectional art show is, what a radical art show is, and like how can we like push up against the art world and challenge it.
Well, so I mean, I think that that's awesome. You know, I think that I've seen over the last few years a lot more spaces and collectives of artists who are trying to get their work out and not necessarily looking for that validation from the formal art world, which I think that there's always been that space, but I think now more than ever, it's really kind of coming to the forefront, and artists are finding success in going, you know, their own route. And so when you talk about doing more radical shows, I know during our conversation, you talked about your thesis project, which was Hedonist Buddhist, and how that was actually running parallel to the beginning of the Don't Mute DC I guess, movement. And so could you talk a little bit about that project? You said you were also in the Shay, you had a space in the Shay. And I know that you touched on gentrification and the people that were essentially enacting it upon the community. And so, yeah, I would love it if you kind of talked about how that exhibition came together and, you know, the major themes of it.
Yeah, when I entered grad school, my full intent was to do a show about gentrification because I grew up in DC. And I partnered with WPA to help me get into a gentrified space because I feel like it's obviously it's for people who have been gentrified or experiencing it. It's for us. It's we already understand what's happening, and I felt like the gentrifiers just weren't being challenged in any way, or they felt like, you know, they lived in this like fantasy world. So art that of like commerce and whatever. So the Shea is a very perfect example of that. So it was like we had to like infiltrate a space, a gentrified space, and WPA helped sort of navigate that. And then I essentially created Hedonist Buddhist, which was a critique of gentrification and also sort of an example of what could happen without these hyper commodified spaces. So I created like a reading room in there. I hosted activist meetings. We had like community-based yoga. We had talks about gentrification. We held like creative poster making projects that where we created posters that were anti-gentrification. So yeah, I was in that space, and right before, was it before or right during, or in the middle of my show? Sorry, it's like a while ago now. The Don't Mute DC thing happened, and I just felt so validated by that moment, and eventually, like, I was able to get to meet up with Yadia, and then we took the space towards the end of my show and converted it into like a mini go-go museum. And we held more programming, more lectures, but specifically about go-go. Malik, the drummer, was in there. We were just like making a lot of noise, like really really taking it to that community. And then and then I was able to help fundraise some money we wanted to have Mochella in the Shea, but unfortunately that didn't happen. We had it on 14th and U, and since then I've been sort of working with Long Live Go-Go on their projects.
Yes, yes. And so that's something else that we discussed was that, you are kind of the creative mind behind these posters that we've been seeing all over the city, for Mochella. And we talked about that. And you were saying that you had borrowed that from Chicha music, and kind of give us a little background about that and those parallels that you saw. That would be great.
Yeah, I think so. When I was doing Hedonist Buddhist, I was like really obsessed with globe posters, because that's what, they used to do the go-go designs, and you would see them all over DC. And then a friend of mine said that the globe posters reminded him of like the loudness of these chicha posters in Peru, and how the music of go-go and chicha sort of have these parallels as far as like class dynamics and something that is the music of the people that the majority try to ignore or whatever. And so he showed me these posters, and I was like, this is like way too perfect. Like the loudness of the posters is so similar, and it fits the mood of go-go. So me and Yadia and Katie Pettit of Current Movements conceived of this like mayoral run that Yadia would do, where he had 8 points. Like, and this was off of like when Marion Barry was running, he had like an 8-point plan. So we were like, what's Yadia's 8-point plan? And then we came up with these 8 points to create 8 posters, and then we had them just create them, and they've been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you know exactly what you're looking at when you see them, and So you are a native Washingtonian. I heard you kind of drew these parallels again with Marion Barry's 8 Points. And so I know that Nomu Nomu is relocating to Baltimore. And so how does that feel as a native Washingtonian who, is already speaking about gentrification, who's a part of these different movements to preserve the culture in the city, to ultimately still find yourself being pushed out of the city?
It really sucks. Like, I really wanted it to be in DC, and I always thought it would be, I didn't think it would be in Baltimore, but ultimately, like, it's unaffordable. And of what I'm seeing, gentrification, it seems like it's gone on hyperdrive. So, I think it's a sad thing for me, but it's also like, it's okay. I can like refocus and try to make sure that, people in Baltimore, I can help inform people in Baltimore, and I can strategize with people in Baltimore to protect their own communities.
Mhm.
I'm definitely, still in DC. I'm still working with Long Live Go-Go. My mom's in DC, so I haven't like fully left, but as far as space goes, it's just it just seems too hard, and I haven't really seen many artists able to thrive in what's happening right now. So
It's unfortunate because I always wonder what that will do to the culture here. If we don't have artists and the artist activists can't stay, we just end up in Maryland or in Virginia or in some other city. And so then who then tells the story of DC, the true story? So I don't even have an answer for that.
right. Well, that's why I'm also trying to get into publication. And we're working with Long Live Go-Go on a book.
Okay.
And I think that creating books and and I think it will be a focus of mine moving forward, is like making sure that, specific stories are documented and not erased,
hmm hmm So I guess this is one of my last questions, and then that is, with everything, all of the footage and the photography and the different posters that have happened around the Don't Mute DC and the Mochella, do you foresee an exhibition coming out or any type of artistic collaboration to chronicle what's happened over the last few years?
That's definitely possible. I mean, I haven't even really thought of that, but yeah. I mean, after this book, I mean, I have like, there's so much incredible photography that has
hmm
happened with all of these events. Um, Obviously, we have the posters, um, and we have recordings. So, I mean, it would be quite a task to sort of figure out how to collect all of this and turn it into an exhibition, or maybe have it online somewhere. I think that's absolutely important. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, I think it would be a very immersive and something that you could do in a digital and a physical space.
Yeah.
So think about it.
Yeah.
I hope
I
that the
mean, I'm
world.
gonna need help. That's a lot of work.
I know, I
Making
know.
this book was like, whew, it's just so much, but it's definitely worth the work.
Absolutely. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Our creative to watch, and everybody go follow at Nomu Nomu on Instagram so you can stay tuned with their upcoming projects and when they open their physical space in Baltimore.
Thank you very much.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Okay, guys, so we're getting close to the end of the show. We've got a musical performance for you by Permanent Sigh that's about to come on. And then you will see a photo set by Cedric Pelt from the DuPont Underground in honor of Breonna Taylor.
Rick Irby on the bass guitar, Andrew Pendergrass on the keys, and I'm Rob Stokes. Thank you to Charvis and Michael and Matt Talley and Nick for having us here. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We have about a 30-minute set we're gonna play for y'all. This is all new music from a record we made. This is a new band. It's called Permanent Sigh. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Hits. 1.